Welcome back to the Wild Wisdom Podcast. I'm your host, Alyssa Finnig. I have a very special guest with me today, Dr. Paula Strait. She's an osteopathic physician, and I'm blessed that she's doing some work out of the studio that I own in Bark in Indianapolis, and love to get to know her because she really shares some of her knowledge with me, and she has over 30 years experience being a physician and all kinds of methods and mind-body wisdom. And I really love that about her. And I love what she shares. So I'm excited to dive into this conversation and share more. So thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
So I like to let everybody know that, a little bit about your history, your background and how you got into this, how you chose to even become an osteopathic physician. And then I know that's kind of led you down different paths over the last 30 plus years and now here in Indianapolis. So you want to share with the audience?
Sure. There's a lot to talk about, and I just thought we could start really with that dream that young children have. You look at young children growing up, and they have an incredible imagination and real generosity of their heart. So I know I'm not the only one who dreamed of doing something really remarkable, really big. And as I worked at the medical school as a professor in family medicine, I got to interview the young doctors coming in. And they all had these hopes and dreams of how they could have a big impact on their community. So this generosity of spirit, I think, was the driving force, for me to kind of enter into that world of possibility, what's out there. And I was fortunate because I could go out into the woods and poke around and discover things. I wouldn't say I'm a creative person. I've been thinking a lot about the difference between being creative versus having imagination. So I saw the woods as a place where I could discover connections and things, and I could be nurtured by the forest. And that sense of self, of who am I, where am I, what am I doing, how am I doing it, that I think is in the realm of the young child. I think the child notices their family life and their community, and then decisions are made about, who am I going to be? How am I going to show up in the world? So at a very early age, I knew that, number one, our community was in trouble. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of suffering, a lot of illnesses, and I just instinctively had a sense I could do something. I remember as a little kid standing in a doorway, and I could hear the adults talking, and I looked at my hands, and I thought, I have hands. I can use my hands for something. My father was had been studying chiropractic medicine. He didn't actually graduate, so he wasn't a chiropractor, but he was a student of chiropractic. So I grew up in a family where learning was very highly valued. And noticing the needs of the people around us, that there are people with special needs, the elderly, the young children, people with brain injury. And maybe I was privileged to grow up in a community that valued learning and really inspired us to become better learners. And one of the gifts of going to school was learning how to learn. So the more I learned, the more there was to learn, and it was, an endless process. I loved going to medical school because I discovered things I never would have discovered otherwise. So I was very grateful that, I was a skinny little kid in a little town. We were, in essence, nobody, nothing special other than having a big dream and somehow tapping into that ancestral wisdom that we have to care and protect the people that are vulnerable. So I've always been a lifelong learner, and I was never satisfied. It wasn't good enough to just stop and say, okay, great, now you're a doctor. That's good enough. You can just kind of plug in and make do. And unfortunately, having an imagination means that you're always thinking about, well, what if we could do it differently? What if that wasn't true? What if there was another way? And so being in the woods and exploring was innate to me. I love the woods, and I honestly would say that the forest has a medicine that the world really needs. And so if we planted more trees, for example, and got people out into the forest, much of this disconnect that we see in humans, modern humans are extremely uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. They really have a loss of identity. We get shoved into cities where they're very busy, and your identity now gets consumed into being a member of a corporation, and so that essential wisdom of who am I and how am I showing up in the world, we have to reconnect to that, get back to what we were as kids. And so to this day, I've always had a strong connection with the forest, and I was able to go up to Maine and spend time in the forest there. And then last year I was able to spend time in Alaska. So I'm hoping, since I've retired after 25 years in rural emergency medicine, I'm hoping in Indiana I can really spark some more imagination and curiosity about getting us as a community, having little walkabouts, exploring the forest, maybe even doing some tree climbing. Like some of the kids with special needs have benefited from going to a physical therapy program where they put the ropes up in the trees and create some platforms, and the kids get to hang out and really be part of the forest. So, mm-hmm. Since going to medical school, I had always dreamed of coming back to my home community, and I actually never did do that. Mm-hmm. So I was a rural physician, and living in the city has been a shift of mindset for me. One is recognizing that the city offers a way of engaging in a much larger community, and I see Indianapolis having a potential hub where we could really talk about transforming our own individual health and the health of the community, and then spreading that message, because obviously Indianapolis has a lot of issues and not just potholes.
But that's a big issue.
Yeah. And my feeling is that our health problems that we experience on an individual level are actually a community problem. Mm-hmm. And as a community, if we can talk about what we can do to support each other, and we're having more and more vulnerable things happen. Like half of our children have chronic illness, and that's a vulnerability. That's not a strength. Mm-hmm. And modern medicine is fabulous for having the criteria that determines whether you have a disease or not, and having the criteria to determine if a medication or surgery would effectively treat the disease that you have. Modern medicine is very yang kind of energy of, mm-hmm. let's go in, we're going to fix it, and we're going to use force. But the traditional healers were the grandmothers, and they showed a wisdom that made sense, that sustained communities, and were able to pass that wisdom on to the next generation. And so that's my hope, is that we can spark some imagination and have that possibility of a vibrant community locally, and get people out connecting with each other and their kids, and walking on the Monon and things like that. Because I really want to hold two things to be self-evident: that we need modern technology and we need it to be applied effectively, but we also need to reconnect to that ancestral wisdom, and start using the remedies that are free. I mean, like the forest is free. So
Yes, you know that I take my dog hiking, and that's how I rejuvenate, even in the middle of winter. Usually I won't go below 25 degrees. I probably have enough gear to kind of keep me okay at that. But it's so healing for me. And I get a season pass. I can go to our local state park, which is luckily only 20 minutes away from downtown. And when I have more time, I'll go to one of the state forests or that sort of thing. But it's very healing, and so we think a lot alike in, the wisdom of the body, which we'll go into more too. But the wisdom of nature and just how the earth moves and all of the natural world. And there's so much healing that can take place, just as you were describing, children, helping children learn to climb trees. We both have a love of horses and how they can help us learn about ourselves. But it's something that has gotten lost. And I know that how I've been attracted to it because it's been so helpful for me, and I share that with my niece, and she's so thankful for that. And she's the one who, goes rent a cabin in the woods with me and goes hiking and goes to work with horses, so I can share that with her. And I know you share that with your children and grandchildren and others too. And I think it's essential, and it's really wonderful that you did come into my life, that you could share your knowledge and this mutual love, because, I can't do it alone. It's good to have a community of people to share this and build. So I really appreciate that. Yeah.
Well, I was astonished that you were able to articulate very clearly about the importance of wild wisdom. So as humans, we're not comfortable. We just aren't comfortable. So we do all these things to try to make us more comfortable, and we draw toward comfort. We just think, if I could just be more comfortable, that'll fix problems. And actually, it makes it worse. The more uncomfortable we are, the better it is. And so like in music, jazz has a tension to it, and you have to somehow embrace the discordant things and come to a resolution. So practicing this interface between comfort and discomfort is a skill that for sure has been lost. And with media, we're indoctrinated, I guess, to seek comfort, that there's a way to fix this problem without going into the discomfort. And so I've thought a lot about this. When I was doing my residency, I took a hike up to the Schwangunk Mountains. And I was by myself, which was never a good plan, but I had this notion that I was independent and I'm strong and I can do what I want when I want. And I went on a hike, and it was a public sort of park. So I climbed up, and I'm by a cliff, and there's a waterfall, and it's all so beautiful. And I watched the sunsets, and the sunset was so glorious. I was like, wow, this is great. And I sat there for a moment, and then I'm like, it's pitch black. I am so in trouble here. How am I going to get back to the parking lot? Because the trails they're not paved. They're not defined, because the trees, when they lose their needles and leaves, the ground has a smoothness, so you can't really tell where the path is. If you could see during the day, you could kind of discern. But here it is, it's pitch black. And I had to completely humble myself and say, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how I'm going to do it. But if there was a way possible, I'm going to find my way back. And I walked in complete darkness and came right out into the parking lot where my car was parked. It was a miracle. And it taught me that it's okay not to know. Like, we do get lost. We don't always know what we're doing. And it's much better if we have a community helping us. It's kind of ridiculous that we're trying to do things independently. That's really not a very successful strategy. So I was thinking about Amelia Earhart, how wonderful explorer, and the risks that she took, and it doesn't always pan out when we're exploring on our own. So that was something I was thinking about. You know.
Yeah. So, and I think that's important. Probably why I love yoga so much, because it is one way, not the only way, to help you learn how to sit with uncomfortableness, and especially the meditation part. Movement too, but the meditation part, and how to feel what uncomfortableness can feel like, and be okay with it, and learn to be okay, because it's a practice. Like the first time you do it, a lot of times, especially with meditation, you're like, I can't do this anymore. I need to get out of here. I can't meditate. I hear that all the time. And part of it is we have a hard time feeling uncomfortable. We also, like you said, have a hard time with the unknown, and it's that fear, deep fear, all of us have in different ways. And it's like, how can you develop that trust and faith? That's actually one thing I've been working on a lot, is developing trust and faith, not only in myself, but just in the universe, like just in everything, because I control. I'm a control person. So I think it's good to work with that and find ways to help you get out of that comfort zone. And that is the way to learn how to deal with the unknown and uncomfortableness.
And I think that's where doctors can help people. I've been doing a deep dive into how doctors can help and where they fit in society. And I think it's unfortunate that doctors are in a kind of an ivory tower, the hospital, and we send people to go see the specialist and then go back out into your community. And I would love to see more and more people integrate doctors into their life. So whether you're a hairstylist or a yoga therapist, or you're a fitness trainer, or you're a counselor, if you can have a physician who went through full training, and there's an MD and a DO have the benefit of going through comprehensive medical training. So you study the full spectrum, anatomy and physiology and embryology and immunology and pharmacology, and then the realm of human experience with disease, from delivering babies to the nursing home. So the whole medical field from A to Z is there for the physician who goes to a comprehensive medical school. We have a whole host of other people out there who are helping, because we have a physician shortage. We have people popping up doing health coaching and other methods, kind of filling in the gap of trying to educate the public that, hey, there's a lot that you could do to be more resourceful and keep yourself out of trouble and prevent disease. But I would say that they need to be married together, because physicians are best when they're brought in during times of transition. So from when the baby's born, that's a big change. When people transition and they go into a nursing home, that's a big change. And so these big huge changes that we face in life, we should do that with the help of a physician, but also have the support of a nurturing community, like in yoga therapy. It's fabulous. But I always just think two heads are better than one, and the real advantage a physician has is we had to face our fear and go into the unknown in a very profound way. So the work of being a physician is extraordinary. And I do think there's wisdom gained, even when there are physicians who disappoint us. There still are physicians out there who have wisdom and can be useful, and we shouldn't throw out the baby with the bathwater.
Yeah, I completely agree. And that I, as a yoga therapist, it's all about integrating with healthcare. We don't like Western medicine versus we embrace this only. There are places for that, and I like your approach and your thought process of, let's work together. And I think that's important, especially because most of my clients are healthcare providers. and they need, in some way or another, the Western approach has not worked for chronic things, and so they're looking for something else, and so that can be very useful. What I do with them is very useful, and help support them, and in turn, they are a wealth of knowledge too, and I work a lot with physicians and other healthcare professionals too, and I think that integrative approach is really helpful, really needed. So, and I love that it's growing and seeing that more, especially as a yoga therapist. I see that in a lot of ways. But of course, in the U.S., mostly on the East and West Coast, but it's really growing. I mean, I wouldn't have been able to open Embark 10 years ago, and do what I'm doing now as a yoga therapist 10 years ago. Now, more people are open. I mean, I've worked at Eskenazi Hospital here in town. I've worked with the physical therapy department and the VA hospital on research studies. Like, they embraced yoga as a therapy. I mean, that's amazing, and saw some amazing results with it. And I love that. And I know that you're passionate about sharing the wisdom of the body with physicians, especially women physicians. And both of us work primarily with women. Nothing against men, it's just who falls into our lap. But just sharing the wisdom of the body with everyone too. You want to explain more about why it's important, and even why it's important for physicians?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so when I talk about the wisdom of the body, there's a couple of things. One is that when we're born, we are imprinted, if you will, with a fully operational system. Now, we're not mature, so our operational system comes on board slowly as we learn to walk and talk, and we have developed maturity, probably physical maturity, by the time we're in our early 20s. So we have a long period of maturation. But all of the processes, all of the stuff, all of the things that we need to function as a human, we have it from the get-go. And so it's not like we have to add or subtract something in order to function. We've got it. But the ability to function requires achieving certain developmental stages. And so if you keep a child isolated, and this was really fascinating during the war, World War II, mm-hmm. the Great War of World War II, during the bombings, London was getting blitzed. There were children in cribs mm-hmm. who were being cared for in a like a hospital, and they had all their needs met. It was presumed they were dry, clean and dry. They were fed. They were safe and sound. And yet, a large number of those children died, and they began to understand that it was the loss of touch, mm-hmm. the loss of connection. So, we are primed neurologically. There's a reason why touching the skin works. Mm-hmm. It's necessary when a newborn comes out. They have a stepping reflex, for example. You touch the bottom of their foot, they're going to withdraw their foot. These reflexes are innate and actually build more capacity. So it starts off with kind of unconscious automatic reflexes, and then we go through stages where we become conscious, mm-hmm. and we can choose how we want to respond to our environment. I would say that we don't yet have a community system that allows us to develop to our fullness as a human, where we've really integrated our responses internally through the nerves, blood vessels, lymphatics, just the whole thing of being human. We're meant to thrive and to play, have fun, and movement and play. And so yoga therapy is a mind-body medicine that it is just based on our normal anatomy, physiology. It somehow got divorced from modern medicine, partly because when the plague happened there was such a high death toll from infection, nobody wanted to touch anymore. So we'd stand back, kind of write out a prescription, hand it to somebody, and leave. And
we didn't want the plague.
We didn't want the plague. And the wise women who were in the forest were marginalized. because modern medicine offered something, novel, I guess. I don't know. But we have an opportunity to integrate and stick with what's true. There really is a way the body functions with elements like your blood and your nerves, and these are real things. They're not concepts. So if you don't feel good, sure, we have emotions, we have thoughts, we have reasons why we don't feel good, and we need to adopt attitudes. But sometimes we don't feel good because we actually have a physical disturbance that has distorted the free flow. So flow of information, cell-to-cell communication. These are phenomena that we're just discovering. And one of the most recent discoveries I think is fascinating is that within the body is water, and within the water is a special kind of water. So there's a fluid within the fluid. And the fluid within the fluid organizes structures, even our DNA. So it's a form of water that the water has stacked itself into an orderly format, and it's called ordered water. And it's pure water that excludes all the other elements, and it becomes as strong as steel and can act like a communication system. So the things that we knew intuitively because it worked experientially, now we're proving through science that, there's actually a reason for it. It's not just a vague concept.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, as I love evidence-based when it's backed by science, but I also don't rule out everything that isn't backed by science. But I do enjoy when things are validated in some way, because then that is also a way to bridge between complementary medicine, mind-body medicine, and more of a traditional allopathic approach. So I think that's good.
Yeah, I don't advocate alternative medicine. I don't want an alternative. If you really look at the definition and the historical evidence of medicine, you'll discover that there was a fight between doctors who were trying to promote good hygiene, safety, wellness, and those who were magicians. And so the word pharmacon, the root word of pharmacy and drug therapy, what means to mask or to deceive. There's always been this kind of dynamic between what's real and what we think it should be. And can we kind of create a phenomenon that people will pay for, or can we prove by collecting data? And we have proved that clean water makes a difference. We have proved that hygiene, washing your hands, it makes a difference. There's a lot about well-being that has been proven, but I think now we're at a stage where the community itself, individually, you have people wearing Fitbits, for example. We have to collect data and get enough data to take us to the next level of functionality, which is integrative medicine. And integrative medicine is not an alternative. We have a deficit in modern medicine. It's not good medicine, really. We know that. There's a lot of research papers that get published that are not really, they've been manipulated for the outcome to advocate for something. That's why we have such controversy and arguments about, should I take my cholesterol pill or should I not take my cholesterol pill? It gets very confusing for people. And one way to overcome confusion is to have a team of people, and I would advocate a yoga therapist. Have your family get on board that you're trying to work through and get yourself to a higher level of function. Measure your level of function, like how many steps can you actually take before you don't want to anymore. And now you've set a bar and you say, like, wow, I can only walk 10 minutes and I don't feel good. And then maybe a few months later, you say, I'm up to 30 minutes. I can do this. And you're collecting data and you're trying to really discover what has value? Is it truly helpful? And I don't think it's helpful to pop a quick fix, whether that's an herb or a drug. I don't think it's helpful to give your power away to other people. But if you had a good old-fashioned family doctor, the general practitioner had a way of sitting with someone, listening to them, and we've lost that.
Mm-hmm. We really have.
Yeah.
Yeah, what, they get 7 minutes with patients now or something. I don't know what the actual thing is, but I know they don't get, a lot of family physicians do not get a lot of time.
30 years ago, I got out of my residency, and we had 2 patients every 15 minutes scheduled. And actually, the research shows that physicians interrupt their patient within the first 30 seconds. That's the average time that they get interrupted. So it's not good for any of us, actually, but there's reasons why our system exists the way that it does. And if citizens could begin to participate instead of just assuming that someone's looking out for them, then we create a better system for our children. And we have genuine, authentic conversations about what's really happening. Like when I started medical school, we didn't have autism. 1 in 10,000, 1 in 5,000, and then it got more and more and more. Now we're up to 1 in 40 children have autism. This is not because we're better at identifying it. Autism simply did not exist that way. And it's a multitude of things are confronting us, so it really is going to take engagement of every single adult. We cannot neglect our children anymore. Our children are so stressed out that in kindergarten, the teachers are reporting that they're having huge issues of stressed out kindergartners.
It's absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we want kindergarten to be a place where the kids actually have fun and enjoy being, their little bodies are growing and learning, and the love of learning has to come through some enjoyment and safety. And so we're just coming out of many decades where we tried to ignore things. Oh, that's not a problem. That's not a problem. Everything's good. It's all fine. That's not a problem. That's not a problem. Well, you know what? It's a problem. And it cannot be solved by our current methodology, which is to do surgery or medicate everybody. We need surgeries and we need medications, particularly for complex problems. We must have that. But there's such a large proportion of us that are dysfunctional. We don't have a disease, but we're not functioning. And the only path forward is to learn how to get on the ground, learn how to get your body to cooperate, and prove to yourself that you can get younger as you get older. That to me is just radical transformation. And so when I was a kid, my aunt was a nurse, and her best friend was a woman who was probably in her getting close to 80 years old. And every morning, her name was Ma. So Ma Baines would get on the floor and do some maneuvers. And I was watching her like, wow, I've never seen an adult get on the floor. And she was having fun, and it was playful. And it was so inspiring to me. I never forgot that there are things that are possible for us. It's never too late to support the body and help it function more, and to really be curious about yourself and what would your life be like a year from now if you could have your dream life, if you could be that person. You look in the mirror and your eyes are clear, your cheeks are rosy, like your tongue is clear, you have endurance, you can show up and be engaged. That would be amazing. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. And when you talk about people not being able to get, adults not getting down on the ground and doing things, I see that a lot. And then we have a lot of people come to the studio and we have classes where you can modify, but sometimes it turns in, you haven't done it in so long, it turns into a fear of not being able to get back up. And I've had even some of my former clients coming to classes, and it's like, you have to do it in order to help your body relearn
Right.
how to get up and down with assistance, with chairs, and get past the ego of I don't want to be seen doing that, or
Right.
maybe you do it in the privacy of your own home and hire someone, but like you have to get past that. I see when you were talking about this, I'm thinking of my dad. My dad's been diagnosed with diabetes, which runs in both sides of my family, and we were walking, and he's like, "Slow down! I can't walk as fast because my diabetic feet." And I'm like, so then he chooses not to walk. And I'm like, that's just going to make it worse.
Yeah.
But he has to be willing to do that.
Yeah. Fear is a huge motivator.
Mm-hmm.
And we should have fear
Sure.
about things. But then if we were connected to community that had wisdom, we could work through that. And the truth is, we are going to fall if we're old. Mm-hmm. We do fall all the time. In fact, it is probably the single biggest contributor to difficulties in our older population, because when a man falls and breaks a hip, his mortality increases 8 times.
Wow.
In the first 3 months after that fall, there's a great likelihood that he will not survive the fall. So if he can learn this dynamic of, okay, I'm going to practice getting on and off the floor, and then just being curious, well, what could I do about my diabetic feet that might actually be helpful? And so rather than pushing through, like trying to walk more, I might start more simply with building that body of the wisdom of the body. So building connectivity to the feet again. So taking your shoes and socks off, looking at the feet, touching the toes, wiggling the toes, finding the skin in between the toes, looking at the shape of the foot, the tension, the ball of the foot, the arch, maybe taking a Coke bottle, the old-fashioned Coke bottle, and rolling the foot, or putting a towel down. It's very important with the feet, particularly with diabetes. You get numb in the feet, so you can't even tell. So you have to be very careful that there might be something in the shoe that could damage the feet and things like that. Soaking the feet in Epsom salt, doing like the hot stone massage. If you do it at the proper temperature, is not harmful. But if you can't feel your feet and you put them in boiling water, you're going to suffer wounds. So you have to be very careful, but use the resources that we have to wake up that connection from the head down to the feet, because the nerve to the toes is the longest nerve in the body. And that's where, again, being a physician is helpful, because having all that background information of not only what the stuff is, but how it connects through all the systems, through the blood vessels and nerves and lymphatics and things like that. So I imagine most of us sit a lot, so the feet are not going to be able to walk simply because we're sitting so much that we've cut off that source of flow of power through the hips. So one of the things I have people do when they wake up in the morning is roll over on their belly face down and let those hips extend. And then a little while later, when they're feeling comfortable, they might be able to get up on their elbows and let the low back have a slope to it. Because flattening of the low back cuts off that power to the legs. So these little things we can look for on an examination. Whereas if you go to someone who's a helper, like a health coach or a fitness trainer or yoga therapist, they might not know the depth of what to look for. And you mentioned about when I looked at your feet, that I was one of the first people that had actually looked at your tibia.
Yeah. So Dr. Strait has worked on me, and she is the first person who ever worked on my big toes and my tibia bones on both sides, obviously. And no, I've been to a lot of people, physicians, specialists, holistic practitioners. I mean, you name it. I've been through a lot on my own journey of healing. But you were the first person, and probably because you're an osteopathic physician, so you work with the bones. But in what you were trained, because I specifically asked, like, where'd you learn this? You're like in medical school. And but to work with my big toes and then the tibia bone, and that is where I have issues sometimes. And I'm guilty just as everyone else of not always doing my exercises, but it was just fascinating to me, and that connection and awakening that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Awakening is very important because a lot of what we confront in ourselves is invisible. It's a barrier that is hidden so deep we don't even remember, like falling off of our bike, getting our foot jammed somewhere. Minor trauma. It didn't kill us, but it set up a disturbance. And so one of the gifts I want to give people is the gift that for your family member, you can simply have them lie on their back, their feet hanging toward the edge of the bed, and then you just touch the big toe, and it's not a hard squeeze. You're just pressing the big toe and noticing where that big toe is in space. One foot might be twisted out or in, or one toe might be stiffer than another. There might be a change in the color or the texture, but one of the tools I was taught as a physician was called ART, A-R-T. Mm-hmm. So A is asymmetry, R is restricted motion, and T is tissue texture change. So the practice of medicine has to be embodied. You can't stand at the doorway and just proclaim something and then leave. You have to touch the body. And nowadays, we have to become our own doctors because we have a doctor shortage. Mm-hmm. And quite frankly, we have 400 physician suicides every year. So we have even less physicians because they're finding that the practice of medicine in the hospital pharmaceutical complex is unbearable. Mm-hmm. So connecting to the big toe is so simple. You press for a second and then release, and you're just kind of awakening the pathway. The pathway exists, but it goes dormant. It slowly starts to sink into the abyss, and you don't notice. And this lack of noticing is really our biggest danger. We don't even know that we don't know. Mm-hmm. And we're walking around really kind of half human.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's a great way to end with sharing some of those stories, and you will appreciate this. So my father used to have me rub his feet growing up and, give me $5 or whatever. And I'd be like, ew, but I did it because I was a kid and you did what your dad or mom said. And so the joke has always been, now I work on people's feet, either through Thai massage or other type of body work, or even just yoga therapy movements and things like that. And so we're talking about this. I'll probably tell him later, like, oh, well, we just talked about doing this. And first I'm going to see if my niece will just take this over and show her. But I feel like I should probably go work on my dad's feet for him. He always appreciated when I did Thai massage. But it's also that caring and sharing between your family members. Yeah. But it's just really funny how it all came back to, used to massage his feet, thought it was disgusting, never wanted to do it, and here it's part of my profession now. And so the full circle of life.
Yeah. And Christ himself washed the feet of his disciples. And so it's good for us to humble ourselves and get connected to the real deep root of what it means to be human.
For sure. Well, thank you, Dr. Strait. I really appreciate you being on the show today and sharing even, in the end, I'll make sure I put notes to letting people know some of the simple things they can do at home, because I think that's important. And that's one of the reasons I have this podcast, and it was nice that you were able to share that.
Yeah, don't be afraid of touching the feet. It's good.
Yeah, well, and it's important, like you mentioned earlier, touch in general. I had a client yesterday said, "I'm so glad you're not afraid to touch people," because my hands are just all over, and it's something that she was like, "I just missed that," and it was not any. It was just helping her feel her body again. That's really all it was. And she appreciated it so much. It's why I'm a big proponent of hands-on in yoga classes, because many people are so touch deprived. Yeah. So thank you, Dr. Strait.
You are very welcome.
So thank you, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Wild Wisdom Podcast. If you don't already subscribe to us and you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts, make sure that you hit the subscribe button so you get you're the first to know which episode every week, every Thursday. And also, this episode is sponsored by my upcoming online course, Calm Mind, Wild Body. And if you'd like to find more information on that, you can go to alissafenig.com/Calm Mind, Wild Body. And we'll have links in the show notes for Dr. Strait's offers health and wellness assessments at Embark, as well as she has an upcoming workshop, Unlocking the Wisdom of the Body. So we'll link to that as well, and for my upcoming course. And so if you'd like to know more, don't hesitate to reach out for us. And if you really love listening to this podcast, please take a moment to write a review, especially if you're listening on a podcast app. And we will see you next time. This is Alissa Fenig. Wild blessings.